All right, strap in, everyone, because today's deep dive is going to take us deep into the weeds of philosophy. We're tackling compatibilism.
Oh, yeah. This one is a real head-scratcher.
We're talking about free will versus determinism. And for all you philosophy buffs out there,
Yeah, our philosopher friend.
you're really in for a treat.
It's a big one.
Yeah, so, the basic question here is,
This is one of the biggest ones.
like, can we actually have free will
Yeah.
in a universe where everything might already be predetermined?
If everything is already set,
Yeah.
does free will even make sense?
Yeah, like, picture this. On one hand, we all feel like we're making choices all the time.
Right, yeah. I chose to wear this shirt today. I chose to have this coffee.
Right, exactly. But then on the other hand, what if every choice is just like, a domino falling in this massive chain of events
Right.
that started way before we were even born?
Billions of years ago.
Right, exactly. That's like the deterministic side of things,
Right.
where everything is kind of set in motion.
It's like a giant clockwork universe.
Exactly.
Or we're just cogs in the machine.
We're just along for the ride.
Yeah, so how do we fit free will into that?
Yeah, that's where compatibilism comes in, right?
That's where compatibilism tries to jump in.
So it's this idea
Yeah.
that says, hey, maybe free will and determinism,
They're not actually fighting each other.
they're not like mortal enemies. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe they can actually get along.
Maybe they can coexist, even though it sounds kind of counterintuitive at first.
Yeah, it's one of the more counterintuitive ideas in philosophy.
Right. It's like, wait a minute. How can you be free if everything's already set?
That's the first reaction a lot of people have.
Like, if I'm just a puppet dancing on the springs of fate, how can anyone hold me responsible for anything?
Exactly. Great questions. And these are exactly the questions that compatibilism tries to answer.
Yeah, this is getting really interesting.
Yeah.
So before we even get into, like, the compatibilist responses to this whole dilemma,
Yeah.
we kind of have to lay out the challenge, right?
Right.
So we've got the incompatibilists.
They're on the other side.
They're the ones who are like, nope, determinism and free will,
Cannot go together.
those just don't mix.
Like oil and water.
It's either one or the other.
Yeah.
So, like, what are their main arguments for why they think these two ideas just clash?
Okay, so one of the biggest arguments they have, really the one that gets all the attention, is the could have done otherwise argument.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of this one.
So basically they say, look, if determinism is true, if everything really is set in motion,
Right.
then every single event that happens,
Yeah.
including every choice we make,
Yep.
is just an inevitable outcome
Okay.
of a chain of causes
Ah.
that goes all the way back to the beginning of the universe.
Right.
So in other words, we couldn't have actually chosen differently,
Right.
even if it felt like we could have.
Right. Even if it felt like we had other options.
Yeah, even if we agonized over the decision.
We were always going to pick A instead of B.
You were always going to pick that veggie burger.
Right, exactly. It's like saying I chose the veggie burger, but in a deterministic universe, I was always going to pick that veggie burger.
You're saying, I thought I was choosing between the veggie burger and the pizza,
Yeah.
but the choice was already made for me.
Right. And it makes you feel like, okay, am I really in control here?
Right, it makes you feel like you don't have control over your own life.
Yeah, like what's the point of even trying to make a choice?
Yeah, this is why a lot of people find determinism so scary.
So it's not just like a theoretical debate.
It really matters.
Yeah, it has like real consequences
Yeah,
for how we see ourselves and how we see our place in the world.
absolutely. If everything's already decided, then what's the point of anything?
Yeah, are we all just like, robots following a program?
Right.
And then the incompatibilists have another argument up their sleeve, right?
They do. They do.
And this one gets even deeper, I think.
This one is about who's really in control.
Yeah, about agency. So what's this ultimate source argument all about?
Okay, so they say, if determinism is true,
Okay.
then the ultimate source of our actions
Uh-huh.
is not actually us. It's not inside of us.
Oh, okay.
It's in this chain of events
Okay.
that happened before we were even born.
So, like, my choices aren't really coming from me.
Exactly. They're coming from things that happened before you even existed.
That's kind of wild to think about.
Yeah, it is. It's like saying you're not really the author of your own life.
I'm just playing out a script that someone else wrote.
Yeah, and this one's a little harder to swallow.
Right, because we like to think we're in charge, right?
Yeah, that we have free will, we make our own choices.
We're the captains of our own ships and all that.
Exactly, but the incompatibilists say, no, you're not. It's all an illusion.
Well, All right, so we've got these two big challenges from the incompatibilists.
Yeah.
Could have done otherwise.
Uh-huh.
And ultimate source.
Right.
And now the compatibilists have to figure out a way to respond.
They have to try to answer these challenges.
Yeah, like how do you even begin to reconcile these ideas?
Right, that's what we'll talk about next.
It's going to be fascinating to see how they approach this.
Yeah, the compatibilists have some clever arguments of their own.
All right, well, I'm ready to dive into those.
Let's get into it.
Okay, so classical compatibilism, it's like a good first attempt,
Yeah, it's a good starting point.
but it doesn't quite solve all the puzzles.
There are still some pieces missing.
So how have philosophers tried to, move beyond that?
Right, how have they tried to make compatibilism stronger?
Yeah, have they found any more convincing ways to reconcile free will and determinism?
Oh, absolutely. Philosophers, they love a good challenge.
Right, always up for a good debate.
And they've come up with some really interesting responses.
Like what kind of responses are we talking about here?
Okay, so one path they've explored is called new dispositionalism.
New dispositionalism.
Hmm.
Okay, that sounds pretty fancy.
Yeah, it's a mouthful.
But what does it actually mean?
So instead of just looking at our individual choices, like one choice at a time,
Okay.
it looks at our dispositions to act in certain ways.
Dispositions, like what do you mean by that?
It's kind of like our tendencies, our inclinations.
Oh, okay, so like personality traits.
Yeah, you could think of it that way.
Like if someone's generally a kind person,
Right, they have a disposition towards kindness.
they're more likely to help others, even if that specific act of helping
Yeah.
was somehow, predetermined.
Right, so even if everything is determined, we still have these dispositions.
And those dispositions shape how we act.
Yeah, they influence our choices.
So it's not about going back in time and making different choices.
No, it's not about rewinding the tape.
It's about recognizing that even in a deterministic world, we have these inherent tendencies.
These leanings, these predispositions.
And those tendencies are part of what makes us who we are.
Exactly, they're part of our identity.
Okay, so how does this help with the could have done otherwise problem?
So instead of asking, could I have chosen differently in that exact moment?
Right.
New dispositionalists ask, if my dispositions were different, would I have chosen differently?
Oh, that's interesting. So it's kind of like a thought experiment.
Yeah, it's a hypothetical.
Like if I had a different set of dispositions, maybe I would have made a different choice.
Exactly. Maybe you wouldn't have eaten that extra slice of pizza.
If I had a stronger disposition towards healthy eating.
Right, or maybe you would have spoken up when you saw someone being treated unfairly.
If I had a stronger disposition towards, justice.
Exactly. So even though the specific choice might be determined,
Yeah.
our dispositions give us a kind of freedom.
It's like they shape the possibilities.
Yeah, they create the potential for different choices.
Okay, that's a really interesting way to think about it.
It's one way to try to reconcile determinism and free will.
So what other paths have compatibilists taken?
Okay, another one is called hierarchical compatibilism.
Hierarchical. So there's like a hierarchy involved here.
Yeah, it's all about levels.
Levels of what?
Levels of desire.
Okay, this sounds familiar.
I think we all experience this.
Yeah, like when you know you should choose the salad.
But the chocolate cake is calling your name.
Yeah, that internal battle, I know it well.
So hierarchical compatibilism says we have different types of desires.
Okay.
We have those basic first-order desires.
Like, I want that cake and I want it now.
Exactly, those immediate urges.
Yeah, they can be pretty powerful.
They're strong, but then we also have higher-order desires.
Higher order desires. What are those?
Those are desires about our desire.
So it's like, I want the cake,
That's your first-order desire.
but I also want to be the kind of person who doesn't always give in to cake.
Right, that's your higher-order
I
desire.
have like the angel and the devil on my shoulders.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it.
So where does free will come in?
Hierarchical compatibilists say free will emerges when those different levels of desire align.
So when my first order desire for cake
Yeah.
is in harmony with my higher order desire for health,
Exactly. Then you're acting freely.
because both levels of desire are pointing in the same direction.
Right, you're not feeling that internal struggle.
But when those desires clash, that's when it feels like a lack of control.
Yeah, like you're being pulled in two different directions.
So free will is about being in the driver's seat,
Being in control of your desires.
not letting those lower level desires run the show all the time.
Right, having some say in which desires ultimately guide your actions.
I like that. It's like taking ownership of your choices.
Yeah, it's about aligning your actions with your values.
All right, so that's hierarchical compatibilism. Pretty interesting.
Yeah, it adds another layer to the debate.
And it seems like there's even more to explore.
Oh, yeah, we're just getting started.
Wow, so we've covered a lot of ground here, all these different compatibilist theories. It's like a whole buffet of philosophical ideas.
And each theory has its own unique flavor, right? New dispositionalism, hierarchical compatibilism, they all offer a different way of looking at this problem.
Yeah. It's amazing how many different angles philosophers have explored.
It shows how complex this issue really is.
Yeah, I have to say, I came into this thinking it was pretty black and white.
Either you have free will or you don't.
Yeah, but now I see there's so much nuance to it.
There's a whole spectrum of possibilities.
What really struck me is how these theories don't just focus on individual choices.
Right.
It's about how those choices fit into a bigger picture.
Yeah, like our relationships with other people,
Our social norms,
our values.
even our own internal struggles.
Exactly. It's about understanding human agency in all its complexity.
So it's not just about abstract philosophical concepts.
It's about what it means to be human.
And that brings us back to the big question.
The ultimate question.
Does accepting a compatibilist view diminish the significance of our choices?
Or does it simply change how we understand their origin?
Right, like, are we less free if our choices are ultimately part of a deterministic chain?
It's a tough question, and there's no easy answer.
Yeah, it's something we each have to grapple with.
Compatibilism doesn't give us all the answers.
It's more like a starting point for further exploration.
It gives us new tools for thinking about these issues.
Yeah, it's like we've been given a new pair of glasses.
And suddenly the world looks different.
So for all you philosophy fans out there,
Especially our philosopher friend who's been listening so patiently.
we leave you with this final thought.
A parting shot, if you will.
If our choices are part of a grand, deterministic scheme,
Does that make them any less meaningful?
or does it just mean that the story of how we arrived at this moment is even more intricate than we ever imagined?
It's something to ponder.
Keep questioning, keep exploring, and see where your own philosophical journey takes you.
That's what it's all about.